a bit more comfy. And yeah, I don't know how this is going to work. It's all doing weird things. I was going to spend the weekend getting organised, but the weekend happened without me. Hi, it is now 5:30. How are you going? So tonight what I want to talk about is, I want to talk about the counsel brief that I've been putting together, because I think talking about how I like my process of putting it together might help you to organise your documents and, your thoughts about how you need to present your information to your lawyer. And the better you do it, the easier it'll be for your lawyer to understand where you're coming from. And then it'll be easier for the lawyer to put together the counsel brief and get it to the barrister for their opinion. I'm a firm believer that if you believe that you have a case, there is a case to be tried, get a barrister's opinion really, really early in the piece before the lawyer does too much work. They do enough work to really understand your case, and then they put it together as a brief to sort of say to counsel, what do you reckon? This is what I think, this is how it's going to go. So you want an opinion from a barrister. And, a great barrister will say, well, actually, what we might be looking at, it might be better to go this way. That's especially so if you've got a lawyer who's not yet a real expert in their own right in a certain practice area. It happens. There's a lot of lawyers work for firms that do a broad coverage. They're generalists, and generalists, because of the nature of the work that comes in, don't do the same repetitive work over and over. You don't start to really specialise in a certain field. And it's a good thing, because the more pushed you are to understand all of the different things that might affect your client, the better you get. That's just my humble opinion. There's a lot of people that specialise right out of the gate, first job, and they specialise. It does make it a bit hard in the end to kind of break out of that, because your clients tend to follow in certain areas, and you just might not really enjoy other parts of the law as much as you think that you do. So, you can go down rabbit holes in anything. I'm trying to sort of sit in a way that's not too bad. So I spent the weekend starting to put together this barrister's brief. Because I'm not practicing at the moment, I can't give any legal advice. So this guy that I've been, trying to get him to find a lawyer who can help him has found a lawyer, but the lawyer doesn't, he doesn't really have all that much time, but he's happy to get the barrister's opinion. And so I'm putting together the barrister's brief for him. So I do the brief and it goes to the lawyer. Lawyer checks it over and gives it to the barrister for the barrister to come back with an opinion as to, to answer all of the questions. And there's a ton of questions I've got because this matter is complex. And one of the things that you might do if you're self-representing or if you're just at the beginning is you don't know where to start. And if you don't know how to start and how to tell your lawyer what your thing's about, because, I'm not talking to, the really savvy big business guy, the CEO who's got a legal team either on him, like in the firm or in the business or, has a legal firm that they employ. I'm talking to the people that think they will never ever need a lawyer. And most of us fall into that category. Hang on, I'll just have a quick sip. So most of us fall into the category where, life, we just plod along and life kind of happens and we don't need a lawyer until you do. And then it's kind of overwhelming because you've got no idea what happened. You've got no idea what the other side did, what they know. You imagine all of these things. Like, say it's a bank. You imagine that, there was some nefarious dealings where, they were all talking and coming up with this plot to destroy your life. And a lot of the time, that's not actually what happened. What happened is one person knew how to get around the system because the system's kind of been set up to allow it to happen, in my opinion, because the banks make more money that way. And so they haven't stopped, they haven't closed all of the loopholes. And some people, they would not ever cross the line. They will never ever do that. It's something within yourself whether you're going to do that or not. And other people, if you give them an opportunity and, chances are they won't get caught, they're going to bloody well do it. So I think sometimes it's just the opportunity exists and you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there are too many people taking opportunities that they probably shouldn't have been presented with in the first place, and there should be A, a greater chance of getting caught, and B, a really big punishment when they get caught. And of course the problem with things like banking laws, unless you're actually stealing from the bank, you're pretty safe from anything happening. If you're stealing from a customer and the bank benefits, not a problem. Chances are they won't notice. Did you ever watch... you probably haven't. It's so old now. The originals, not the original, the Superman with Richard Pryor. And it was Christopher Reeve as Superman, I believe. And might have been Superman 2, where Richard Pryor works for a bank. And he realises that when there's an interest rate pay on the paper, the bank pays interest, but there's always half cents missing somewhere. And he figures out a way of putting all of the half cents from interest payments into his account, and he gets really, really rich. And there's this scene where the bank manager's talking to someone and saying, I don't know who's doing it. We'll probably never catch them because, they'll have so much money. We were relying on that money for our profit, but, someone's actually taking it. And within all of the accounts, we won't know how to find it. And, someone's so clever and dastardly and, and then suddenly uproars this Ferrari, bright red Ferrari, and Richard Pryor's driving it. And, he gets caught red-handed in... having ripped the bank off. So, I just thought that I'd mention that because I still love that scene. I'm a bit sad. Anyway, so back to putting together a barrister's brief. So, you don't know what you actually know, and you're assuming a few things. Now, the case that I'm putting together, there's not a lack of documentary evidence. Usually you'd have a contract, you'd have, a default notice, you'd have other bits and pieces. You might have, the court documents that have been filed. You'd have very little at the beginning of a case, whereas I'm at the other extreme. There have been a few court cases over the last 10 years. I've got 20 big folders of documents, and of those, even though some of them have been in other court cases. Some of them haven't. They weren't, like, the evidence wasn't heard, it's not been presented. But there's really interesting stuff in all of these. And I sort of thought, well, what I've been asked to do is this much. And then I got this much into this really wonderfully written, because, I'm brilliant. But I got it into a format that would be easy for a barrister to understand and follow. And then I thought, I'll ask him these questions. And then I thought, I am going to have to mention everything that went before, because there are so many questions arising from what happened before to how can this guy get justice for, how does he get anything? So the case that's on foot, it's probably not going to go very far because of other things that have happened. So they're the questions, we believe this has happened and this has happened and this has happened, and these three things together make our case a moot case. It's like, it's not going to change anything, not going to help him get compensation for all of his losses. So then I have to step it, go through what happened before and how come there's nothing left. And it's become bigger than Ben-Hur. So, as I say, it is so complicated. And how do you simplify it? How do you simplify it to the stage where you can get a legal opinion and you can say, well, this has happened and it raises these questions, and this is the law that's been broken, or, that's relevant. And these are the cases that are relevant. And, this is the factual matrix. And, does this add up to what I think it does? And then another question. And then, question has to be, well, who can sort it? And it's just so complicated. So the way I approach it is I actually start out with doing the outline for the whole lot. So you need your documents. You need an index for documents at the beginning of a barrister's brief. And if you've got documents, if you've got a legal matter, if you're self-representing, or if you've got a lawyer, doesn't matter, start an index. Start it on your computer, have it on your desktop, or somewhere where it's really easy to find. Do backups onto your USB drive so you don't lose them. And you start up with your document index. Now, the document index, you want to have what tab it's on. So you start off with document numbers, so that's your consequential numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. Then tab, like which tab is it in? And you can separate it with a tab. Do it properly from the outset and you will always find your documents. You'll never lose a document. The next thing is, what's the document? So is it an email? Is it a statement of claim? Is it whatever? And you've got a description. So you're going to give a description. And, you kind of work your way through that. So I'll just, do that. Ah, there it is. I knew I had it somewhere. So, with your, that's not even the one I want. Have I got the one I want? Oh, there it is. Sweet. So, and the last bit is, what's the date of the document, or what date was it filed? Because you want a quick overview of what all of the documents are. So they're your main headings across the top. And then, hang on, let me sort of show you what I'm talking about. So this one here would be for a family law matter. So it's got your item, your tab number, your document details, and the date filed. And then, you start off what you're going to do. Now, because this is for a barrister's brief, it would be a bit different to how you might set up your document folder at home. I like adding this in to my documents that I keep, only because instead of having the memorandum of instructions as number one, I like to have, what's happened in the case, what's it basically about, who are the parties, who's representing whom, what's it all about? What are we up to? What are the next steps? What's the timing? That should always be front page of whatever documents you're keeping. Even though if you're instructing a lawyer, the lawyer will be doing that in the office. But if you ever have to self-represent, you want to know what your case is up to immediately. You don't want to be like those people that, their lawyer dumps them or they can't afford their lawyer anymore, and then they've got no idea what's going on. Always make sure that you know court dates. Yeah. And I'm saying if you've got a lawyer, you still need to make sure you've done all of that yourself. I've seen too many people who come in and they say, I had a lawyer representing us, but now we don't. And I've got no idea what's going on. And it's really hard for another lawyer to pick it up. And then, of course, you've got the baggage of, well, why haven't you got a lawyer anymore type thing. And sometimes it's just that, things happen. Your lawyer gets sick or, changes jobs and you don't like the lawyer that's come in replacing them or whatever. It's lots of things happen in life that you sort of, you kind of have to be able to go with the flow on that one. So you really want to make sure that you've got a copy of all of your documents at all times. Now, while you've got a lawyer, your lawyer will be keeping file notes and everything. And of course, you won't get the file notes. When lawyers have to hand back the documents to you, say, you have a falling out or, you disagree with what your lawyer's doing and you want to self-represent or whatever, you don't have the file notes. They're the product of the law firm. So they get to keep all of that. They get to keep all of the research they've done. You basically only get the court documents that they've done for you and, the advice letters they've sent you. Some law firms will give it to you. Some law firms will say, what, all of the file notes, you can have them, because there isn't a falling out. There's a logical reason why you're no longer represented by them. And other law firms, no, they're not interested in helping you whatsoever. They won't give you a copy of the court documents they have on file because you can download them from the court yourself. It used to be really difficult because you'd have to go into the court and, get copies of the documents, whereas now with electronic filing, all of the documents are there, so it's not a real issue. But you can keep your own file notes and that from letters. Now, some law firms won't give a written letter of advice from the outset. I don't tend to agree with that. I think clients should know, what the lawyer thinks your case is and, what the advice is in general. All of that could be in the retainer document where they say, I agree to do work up to this point and it's going to cost you this much money. But realistically, you want to keep on top of what the lawyer's saying. And as a non-lawyer, someone who's never had to deal with a lawyer before, you're going to be a fish out of water. You might think you know everything that's going on, but there's nuances to it. and it's really important to have some of this stuff written down. If the law firm you've engaged doesn't give a written letter of advice, just ask for one. I mean, one of those should be really easy to put together from the file notes and memos and the research that they've done. Most graduate lawyers that do the research and that, they set it out in the way that it would be really easy to just cut and paste into a letter and then tidy up the letter to be a good advice. Whether they'll do it or not's another thing. Law firms that don't tend to do it tend to not like doing it, I guess. Some matters, of course, you don't need a letter of advice. If it's just, oh yeah, we're going to go down the courthouse and we're going to do this, that and the other, and it'll all be over in a week. You don't need a letter of advice. They can just tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be in your retainer document. And, if you want them to write you and help you do an application to get your driver's license back, that doesn't need a letter of advice, obviously. But if you want to fight probate, or you want to make an application, under whatever, that's a different thing. That can be more complex, and the more information that comes out. And of course, everything changes once you get documents from the other side. So it's really handy to keep an eye on things for yourself so that you know what's changed and why. So back to putting together the file. So the index for your documents. You would have seen all of I'll just pop this back here. So, it's got orders, applicant documents, respondent documents. So all of the court documents, Now, obviously, if you may not have an independent children's lawyer, and correspondence and, any reports and any subpoenas and, all of the documents, you can fit them in somewhere here. Because an advice barrister brief is different from a trial barrister brief, because the initial advice is we're going to throw everything in that we think, and then, a few months later you might need to go through this process again, especially if you manage to get through to document discovery and you get some of the other side stuff, because that will change things. So you might want another legal advice just to see, has there been enough of a change to move things in a different direction. So, that's what you do. So I've been working through the documents for the matter I'm going through. So just going through every folder I've got and reading through it, and I make a note of, I do want this document because this document goes to this question. So I've done my outline, just a Word document where I've put the outline in from the front page right through to, where the documents are going to start. And I sort of know what questions I want to ask the barrister, because I've really thought about how to put it all together. So now it's a matter of, I know which documents I'm going to need. So it's, I have to go through all of these documents and find the ones that I know are there somewhere, and put them into a document folder to hand over to the barrister, so that the guy will get the whole brief. He'll take it to his lawyer. The lawyer will check over my work, make sure that, I haven't done a great big boo-boo anywhere, and then hand that off to the barrister, who will then come back with an opinion for the guy, and then you know where you stand. So while I'm putting this together, one of the areas that I do need to cover off on, because it helps the barrister, is I've got to put in a chronology So, because this is so complicated and it's so long, where do you pick the starting point? So, I still haven't thought about how far back I need to go, but I've got documents that I can put in for the starting point, and in the chronology, it's pretty much you put the date, the details, like what happened, what evidence do you have for that, and what's its reference. And for that one, the reference is actually the tab. So it's a cross-referencing document that goes back to, this can be found in the document folder behind this tab. So if it's tab 13, that's what it'll be in the reference. And in doing that, you can then, once you look at what you're writing to the lawyer or the barrister for them to read, you can then cross-reference everything. It makes it so easy. I did that when, well before I even thought about becoming a lawyer. We were suing the bank for damages after we'd lost everything, and had a new lawyer, and I had 3 cases of documents, and one day I thought I really need to sort these documents. And we've got a really big long dining room table, and that was covered in documents. I just went through everything, and then I would take them 5 at a time, go upstairs, go on the computer, and I did the chronology. I worked through that thing, everything I needed to do, and just solidly worked at it. I ended up saving it electronically, and I saved it as a PDF file. And then all of the documents, most of them I already had as electronic documents, so I did an electronic file as well as the physical file. And then when I went in to see the lawyer with my husband, I sort of handed over to the lawyer, and he has a look at it and he says, "Oh my God, this is fabulous. This is so good." Because I'd cross-referenced all the documents in this short story that I told. I said, that can be seen in this document, and that can be seen in this document, which is at. And then the actual physical folder, because I didn't know anything about, how to do legal filing and all the rest of it, so I just colour-coded everything. All of this colour is about development applications and, all of that. And this is all of the letters from the Shire and, all of the letters from this and, so that everything was for development. And then all of the contracts and things with the bank. And then I even had all of the correspondence from the lawyers, including all of the invoices. And I put everything together. And I just, in the chronology that I did, I went into conversations. If it was a telephone call that I made on a certain day, I would put in what the conversation was about. And I just went through everything I had. And it was a really good thing. And we ended up settling that one out of court. The bank settled it. They didn't get enough money for it by any stretch of the imagination, but it was done. We managed to move on. But by seeing that, seeing how I could put it together and be on top of what I needed to tell the lawyer, it made it easier. And I did what everybody does. I try to use the legal lingo. I still don't use the legal lingo now when I'm talking with everybody else. And even with lawyers, I don't like to, because some of the legal lingo is just, I don't know. I still don't like it. I guess it seems pompous to me. I don't know. My daughter-in-law always raises me because I use long words just casually. But I tend to do it after I've done a lot of research and writing, and, you know, when you have to write to an academic standard, you kind of have to think these words all the time. So there were a lot of times when I would be using the long, convoluted words. I still prefer simple language, and it's just one of those things. So that's the index that I start off with, the document index, and then the chronology, and then I get into telling the barrister what's what. And because what the guy needs is legal advice, like, this has happened, we've got all of this, this is what he wants to have happen, this is the outcome he wants, how do we get to the outcome from where we're at? And these are all of the things. So, you know, there's the other side is entrenched in their position. They will never settle this. They will go to court at every opportunity. They will throw millions at this, in my humble opinion, because they don't care. Because it's just, you know, one of the parties hates this guy so much that he will just keep going. He will not settle. So there's a few questions, like, you know, after I've finished telling the barrister what the actual case is that's in court at the moment, then it's all of the extras, so the background. And the background's got to be really brief. So it's simplifying all of the stories without taking too much out. And then, you know, ask the questions that you want answered, and then go into your research. Like this, where I put in, you know, for this is what the law is. I believe that, you know, this case is relevant to our matter, blah, 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 blah. And just, it'll be short paragraphs so that they're not taking away from what we need to know, so that it's not too broad, so that the barrister can follow it easily. And, I mean, a complicated thing, it'll be a lot more than it is currently. I mean, the actual case that's in court now, that is a really simple thing. You know, you can cover it off with 2 cases and just, you know, this is what the law is. And that's on this guy's side. The other side's argument, I mean, in one of the advices that he had, says, well, you know, it doesn't even arise because it's rubbish. Whereas I'm sort of thinking, I still need to put it to the barrister, because this wasn't a barrister's advice. This was a bit of research done by one of the junior lawyers or graduate lawyers, and I don't know how the question arose, so I'm still going to put it into the brief. So you kind of, hang on, I'm going to cough again. You know, I only ever cough on a day when I've had to go out wearing a mask, and I'm there. I think there's something to be said for not wearing a mask, because I don't cough unless I have to wear a mask. It's and I mean, the cold weather's coming in now, so oh. Anyway, so you kind of need to, because you won't be, as the client, or, you know, as the person going through court, you might have to write something out for the lawyer to put your story to the lawyer. And, you know, if you're instructing a lawyer, you know, you don't have to go through all of the legal research and that. But if you do have to self-represent, you want to make sure that you're on top of how to research and actually put it all in, and then get a barrister's advice before you go on, because barristers will pick up where you've got a logical flaw in your thinking. And I mean, lawyers do it. I've seen some doozies in some documents where, you know, the argument is XYZ, and then what they use to back themselves up is case law that isn't even relevant in any way, shape or form, but it sounds good. It looks good that you're quoting cases. And I suspect that what happened is they used a pre-prepared document for something else rather than going through the process, and it was a bit of a cut and paste job, and they forgot to get rid of those cases and didn't put the right cases in, just at a guess. We do all sorts of things to save time, and sometimes what we do to save time actually doesn't, and this isn't we lawyers, this is we people. You know, we do the weirdest things, in my humble opinion. I could be wrong. It could just be me who's a bit weird. It can definitely be that. So, what else do I need to tell you? So we've got, you know, the questions that we want to ask. We've got a bit of case law of how we think, what's relevant. That's how I do it. You know, I sort of say, you know, in this matter, you know, the law is blah, 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 blah. And, you know, these cases have a similar factual matrix to, you know, what this poor bugger's got. So, you know, on these facts, what say you? Has he got a good case? Should he go ahead? You know, what's the advice? Is there a better way of getting to the outcome? And that's why you get a barrister's advice right at the beginning, because there is nothing worse than spending a fortune on a lawyer and having them spend, you know, maybe up to a year preparing this stuff, and then they finally go and get the barrister's advice, and the barrister says, yeah, but this here won't fly, and it won't fly because, and you've lost, like you've just forgotten one tiny little thing, and it throws your whole theory out. The whole case theory's gone, and you've pretty much sold yourself a pup. You know, it's not going to work. If you've got a lawyer who does that, that's an expensive little exercise, and someone's got to pay the cost. And it's a tough gig. And then, of course, you have to rejig everything. And what can you use? And is it savable? You know, and how do you even, like, I've seen a brilliant brief put together, and then you sort of say, but what was your loss? And because one of the elements for this case was you have to have a loss, otherwise the court can't do anything. And they hadn't actually had a loss yet. It was a future loss that if something else happened that was within their purview, then they wouldn't have a loss. And it's, unless you've already had a loss, it's really hard to, and, you know, if you haven't mitigated, if you haven't tried to help yourself, then that counts against you. Like, you know, how much of your loss was because you weren't watching the ball? The court doesn't automatically give, you know, really good wins to anybody. They make you fight really hard, and you have to really prove it. And sometimes your loss hasn't crystallised, and sometimes your loss that you have isn't a financial loss. So you might be grieving for the thing you've lost, but it wasn't a financial loss because you didn't own the thing in the first place. And this is one of the favourites for mortgage law. Well, you didn't own the house, you had a mortgage, so you didn't have a financial loss. Of course, the comeback to that is, yes, but I have had a financial loss because I had so much equity in it. And then they say, oh, but you would have had to have paid rent anyway. And it's like, you know, you can keep arguing around that, but my loss of all of the equity I had in the house was still caused by them not following the law. They broke the law. And the banks always come back with this, you know, you didn't actually own anything, you haven't had a loss at all, you know, and you sort of think, banks are crappy. My name is Bank Slayer, so I'm allowed to say it. I know I'm bad, but I'm not. Anyway, so I've got this brief absolutely driving me nuts at the moment because it's getting the nuts and bolts together. So, you know, it's going to be a day and a half just putting the documents into the right files. I mean, this morning it was a trip to Officeworks, which it probably shouldn't be my favourite shop, but I do go there and really like it. Bit weird. So I've got the files that I need. I've got the tabs, the number tabs I need. I can do this. It's going to happen because, you know, it's just, on this one I can't put a physical, I can put the physical file together, but I can't put the electronic file together because I don't have one of those really spicky photocopier scanners. I've only got a slowpoke one, and some of the documents are like 80 pages long, so yeah, it won't be happening. If the lawyer wants to do electronic files, he's quite welcome to, but I can't do that. It's always handy to keep your electronic files in the same order in your electronic folder. So if you have the documents in the barrister's brief in your folder on your desktop, put the same number as your index number as the starting point for the name. So you put 1 dot and then the name of the document, so that the index will then be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'll just make it easier to find the documents within the folder. What else can I tell you about the process? There's probably not much, because you really need to get legal advice as to what your issue is. So for preparing to get the legal advice, I suggest you look through. The quickest way to do it would be for you to write out your story in short paragraphs, numbered paragraphs, and then sort of think about what documents you have that go to each paragraph, like, you know, where you say, oh, you know, on such and such date we signed the contract, you know, we went wherever it was to sign the contract, and then you can reference the contract in that, and then put the contract into the right part of the folder. If you're handling your original documents, I would suggest not hole punching them. I would put them into plastic sleeves. I would always keep a copy of my documents, even if it means you've got to take a trip down to Officeworks and get them all photocopied and an electronic copy made if you haven't already, because you want to keep all of your originals unmarked. I've got some originals where I've written on them because I didn't know any better. It still annoys me to this day that I didn't just do a copy and write on the copy. Do 10 copies if you have to, so that you can write notes on them, so that, you know, you can put sticky notes on them and save them in a physical folder for you know, these are the notes of what I think, and, you know, this here ended up making me do research on XYZ, and you know, this is what I found. And you can keep your own notes separate then, and then once you're instructing a lawyer, you can hand them the original documents. Or if you have serious problems, because there have been issues with, I know of at least one lawyer whose office was raided and one client's files were taken. She had a matter up against one of the banks, which shall remain nameless, only because, you know, I'm not opening that particular can of worms because that was really dirty. And there are a lot of nefarious things going on, so probably best not to delve too deep. But if you don't want to give your lawyer the originals until they need to be handed up to the court, you can give them copies and just say, look, I'll, you know, when you need the originals, they'll be made available. Bank statements and that, electronic copies are fine. The courts are going over to electronic documents anyway, so, you know, in court now they've got all the big screens in court, so if you want to show electronic documents, they just put them up on the big screen, and, you know, all the lawyers can see them, and they've already got a copy anyway. And, you know, it's not as bad as it used to be, where, you know, back in the dim dark ages before photocopiers were, you know, every man and his dog's got a photocopier now, apparently. But yeah, keep your originals in good condition. Put them into plastic sleeves. Those that you don't have an electronic copy of, just scan them and keep an electronic copy. That way you can print out copies if you need to read it and make notes on it. And my puppy's back. Do you want to say hello? He's opened the door again. Must be time for me to finish now. But, you know, work on copies. It just makes it easier, especially if you can do that with bank statements. Just print out a black and white copy and just do your notes on that. And then from those notes you can put that into either your chronology or, you know, the document index. I like reading through documents because there's lots of things in there that you didn't even realise. You've read them 10 times and you still pick up this gem sort of hidden, you know, page 38, one line, just bottom of the page that you haven't seen before because you were so upset about everything else that's in the document. So, yeah, that's about it. Just, that's all you have to do. It's not too hard to stay on top of it all. But I suggest you do. I have trust issues with humanity in general. I mean, it looks like we might be going back into a lockdown and it's all because people can't behave themselves. Yeah, he's in here. He's being a menace. Should have called him Dennis. So, yeah, let me just sort Dennis. Hey, you gonna say hello? Look, aren't they gorgeous? There's the camera. You say hello. Hello. Look. You're gorgeous. Yes, you are. Oh. He's all growly now. He's growly now because I won't let him do what he wants to do. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I'm pretty sure I've covered a fair bit of what you need to know. Let me know in the comments if there is something else you need out of that. I'll be going through this stuff over and over and over because, you know, people will find it eventually. No great rush. Yeah, I will leave it at that, and hopefully we will catch up soon. So if you like the share it, subscribe to the channel. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. I've run out of words tonight. I've been thinking hard today, and I've been writing even harder. So I think that's it. I think we're done.